These are the games that are coming to PC VR in 2023. Let me know if I've missed any in the comments. Vertigo 2 finally has a release date of 30th of March, the much anticipated sequel for the first game. If you haven't played the first game, you need to check it out. You want to get the remastered version, as the original was a very early VR game, and the remaster brings it up to par with more modern VR games visually and mechanically. It's fun, very creative, with lots of people comparing it to Half-Life 1 in feel and vibes. It's got lots of variety with different gameplay and locations, and the second one looks to be taking it to a new level, and this is my number 1 most anticipated VR game going into this new year. My number 2 would be Saints and Sinners Chapter 2. This doesn't have a fixed release date for PC, but it did release on the Quest 2, and it's been confirmed for PSVR 2 and PC early 2023. I love the first game with a very physical melee combat system that works really well, giving the weapons a real feel of weight, and stabbing a zombie in the head feels very visceral and satisfying. I'm hoping for more mission variety this time, as the first one was just a bunch of fetch quests, but I fully expect this to be Game of the Year material for 2023. The developers of Saints and Sinners have also revealed the next game. It's called Behemoth. We haven't actually had any footage that's been shown of the actual game yet. We've had a very pretty CGI trailer at the Game Awards which gives a good idea of the tone and atmosphere they're going for. The developers described the game as taking on the role of a diseased wanderer lost in a frigid, forsaken land. You have to overcome dangerous environments, deadly warriors, and towering behemoths using immersive, weighty VR combat and lifelike physics. You're going to be travelling through strange, otherworldly environments and overcome all no matter how large. This sounds really good with a late 2023 release window. It'll be interesting to see their weighty melee combat used in a non-zombie environment, and I'm getting some real Shadow of the Colossus vibes from the trailer. The sense of scale with some of these big boys will be very intense. Soul of Kaeru is a Metroidvania inspired VR game which shares a lot of similarities with Moss. You see the world from a miniaturette diorama perspective, and you control a frog, but also sometimes go first person to interact with things, or you can use your motion controllers to shine a light to help your little frog friend make his way. Survios, a developer with a lot of VR experience, announced an Aliens game that will be playable with and without VR. It's described as an intense single-player action horror game set in the iconic Alien universe, with its own story set between Alien and Aliens films. The last game, Walking Dead Onslaught, missed the mark for me, but Westworld Awakening was excellent, so I still have high hopes for this. It's being developed in Unreal Engine 5, and the fact that it's both VR and non-VR will ensure that it will have a bigger budget, and it's going to need to look good to attract the non-VR players. Hopefully we get to see some gameplay of this soon. Affected the Asylum is the sequel to The Affected the Manor, which was a short horror experience where you walk through a house and stuff happened to try and make you jump. The sequel is promising a story-driven adventure set across 3 acts, so it seems like we're getting a longer game this time. It also has some sort of multiplayer, but we don't have any details on that yet. The first game looked respectable and it had good polish and production values, so I'm hopeful that this one's going to be good. Propagation, Paradise Hotel, is set for a spring release and describes itself as a survival horror where you get weapons and tools so you can defend yourself whilst trying to survive and make it through the game. Propagation VR is a free horror wave shooter with the option for some paid co-op DLC. It's very highly regarded with very positive reviews on Steam, so this could be good, and it certainly looks better than a lot of these types of games we get in VR. Hello Neighbour Search and Rescue is a new VR game based in the Hello Neighbour universe. These games are essentially puzzle games with people trying to find you, so you have to run, hide, and try and distract them whilst you figure out what you need to do. This VR version has multiple playable characters with different skills, so you're going to have to switch between them to solve different puzzles. It looks interesting and the non-VR games have very good reviews. Madison is a first-person psychological horror game that released in non-VR last June, and it's getting a VR version. It's a perfect fit with you having to use an instant developed Polaroid camera where you have to take pictures to connect to the other worlds and solve puzzles. It's got very positive reviews on Steam, and I'm looking forward to screaming like a little girl with a piece of plastic stuck to my face. Another game that will make me scream like a girl is the Excorcist Legion Sin. This is a sequel to Excorcist Legion. This time it's going to be co-op. We haven't really got any other details on this one yet, but my guess would be some sort of Phasmophobia style game where you go into buildings and you have to try and exorcise ghosts and demons. Grimlord describes itself as a dark fantasy RPG set for release into early access Q1 2023. It looks very similar to Hellsplit Arena, and there is a demo that you can try, but from what I'm seeing it still needs a lot of work to compete with the established melee games like Hellsplit and Blade and Sorcery. Mixture is another Moss-like where you control a moth who can jump and fight their way through the levels, but also you use your hands to create potions and spells to help your little moth to fight and get through the world. I really like the art style on this one, and some people have played the demo at Gamescom and said it has real potential. Unfortunately, it's only been confirmed for Quest 2 and PSVR 2, but I can't see why it wouldn't make its way onto PC as well. Samurai Slaughterhouse is a physics-based combat game with a unique pencil drawing style art. I tried the demo during one of the Steam Fests, and personally I didn't like the way it looked in VR, but I've seen some hype around this game, so it could be one to add to your wishlist if it's your thing. Firmament is a new adventure puzzle game from the developers of Myst. I played through the Myst remake recently, and it's one of the best looking games in VR, and from the footage of Firmament it looks like it's going to be a visual treat. Cyan know how to make interesting worlds you want to explore, and I'm really looking forward to exploring this new world, while simultaneously banging my head against the wall figuring out what I need to do. Cyan are also bringing back Riven, just like with Myst as a remake. It hasn't been confirmed to have VR support yet, but these developers are into VR, and every recent game they've released has VR support, so expect VR support for this one as well. Black Trail is a Wild West game where you get to slaughter the natives all over again, but you also get to experience it from the other side as a Native American throwing tomahawks and using a bow and arrow. This one looks interesting, but a friend tried the demo and said it wasn't very good. That was a demo though, so hopefully they got some good feedback and turned this into a VR game worth your time. The Light Brigade is a tactical roguelite VR shooter with an interesting art style, although it does look like it's been built with the Quest in mind. I'm not personally a big fan of roguelites myself, but I know a lot of people are, so if this is something you might like you can wishlist it on Steam. Galaxy Kart VR is a kart racer like Mario Kart with power-ups and crazy jumps. We've actually had a couple of kart likes in VR, but none have hit the spot for me. Will this one be the one that does? Medieval Dynasty is a survival RPG set in the Middle Ages where you can create your own dynasty, and it's getting VR support. It's actually going to be a standalone version that will be a new release of the game with a new adventure in a new area, so it isn't the non-VR version in VR, but it's a VR game in the same universe with the same gameplay features, but it's going to be made with VR in mind with motion controls. Nothing has been shown of the VR version yet, but hopefully we get some info on this soon. Stranger Things VR is being developed by Tenderclaws, who made virtual reality. You're going to be playing as Vecna, which if you don't watch the show is actually the bad guy, which could be really interesting. I really like the look of what we've seen so far, and as a fan of the show, this is up there with my most anticipated games of 2023. Into the Darkness has been in development for a while, and it even had a demo a couple of years ago. It's very similar to Boneworks, where it's going for a physics-focused combat and exploration type gameplay. The demo felt a little generic, but showed a lot of promise, and they're clearly taking the time with this game to get it right, with regular updates showing the progress, and it's looking like it's really improved since that demo. It's another one that's pretty high on my wish list. District Steel is another game that's been in development for a while, and it has a demo which I've actually played. I love the look of this, and it has a rocket boost you can use to fly up into the air or move quickly along the ground, and then you can go into slow motion and stylishly take out the robot enemies. It's been inspired by old school shooters, and it shows in the level design. It's another VR game with great potential. A Medieval VR is a VR port of the non-VR game of the same name. It's another old school style game, this time inspired by Heretic, so you use a combination of magic and melee attacks, and it's got a cool retro style look to it. The VR version is actually being made by someone who loved the game so much, they pretty much begged the developers multiple times to let them port it to virtual reality. It's been in development for a while, and if this is your style of game, you're going to love it as it has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam for the flat version. Undead Citadel is another game that's been in development for a few years now. We actually had a demo over one of the Steam Fests which was just a wave mode, but it gave people a chance to try out the combat, and it uses a hybrid melee focus system that combines physics, but it's not full physics based like Blade and Sorcery. This results in fun gameplay with minimal jank. The real benefit of this over something like Blade and Sorcery, other than the nice visuals, is the story driven single player campaign that will come with the game. It's another one that's up there towards the top of my wish list. 9 Splintered Mind is another game that has been in development for a while, and this one is a VR detective game set in a futuristic cyberpunk style world. You play as a detective trying to solve a series of murders, having to find clues and talk to NPCs in the game's real world, but also go into virtual reality in the game. It looks really cool and I love the concept. Let's see if the developer can pull this off. Ziggys Cosmic Adventures is a VR cockpit game with a combination of ship management and fun space combat. The ship is designed so you can potentially play this game full rule scale with everything within a 2x2 play space. You're going to need to fix your ship whilst flying through some really pretty looking environments and manage your ship's energy and supplies. You also get to pet a little cute alien, or you can just put it in an airlock and send it out into space. The Last Worker is a narrative adventure centred around our struggle in an increasingly automated world. This game seems really interesting, but it's still unclear what the gameplay will involve. The Steam page says gameplay includes stealth, exploration, racing and combat, so it seems to have a lot of variety, and I've got a feeling that this will be a sleeper hit that will surprise a lot of people. The Signifier is a psychological thriller where you solve a mystery by replaying memories using an AI brain scanner called the Dreamwalker. It has positive reviews on Steam, and it recently announced that it's getting a VR version. The game uses photogrammetry, so the visuals look nice, and it's got a very surreal and trippy feel to it that reminds me of Transcendence. The last three haven't been confirmed for PC yet, but I think there's a chance they will release on Steam. Call of the Sea is an adventure puzzle game set in a lush tropical island with some really nice graphics, and it's got very positive reviews. It was recently announced to be getting a Quest 2 version of the game, but no word on PSVR 2 or Steam, but I can't see why it wouldn't make its way onto the other platforms. Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghostlord is an official Ghostbusters VR game coming to Quest. Considering that Sony Pictures owns the rights to the Ghostbusters IP, I'd be pretty amazed if this doesn't release on PSVR 2 as well. The question is, will the game come to Steam, or is it going to be another one like the Star Wars VR games that release on Quest and PSVR and never make it onto the PC platform? This last one's pretty unlikely, but Crossfire Sierra Squad was announced for PSVR 2. This is a co-op, first-person shooter that looks pretty good, but there's no word if this is going to be an exclusive for PSVR 2 or if it will come to Steam at a later date. We did see some games like Hello Neighbour Search and Rescue which were originally announced for PSVR 2, then later confirmed for other platforms, so hopefully this is the same for Sierra Squad. And that's it. I think that's a pretty good lineup, and as usual every year we get games that are announced and released in the same year, so expect more good VR games coming in 2023. I think this year will be pretty good for releases, with the PSVR 2 finally launching, and I expect we'll see a lot of developers making games that aren't built around the Quest, that will make use of the extra hardware of the PC and the PSVR 2, and we'll finally be able to feel like VR game development is moving forwards instead of